let's get this thing going.
What's up, guys? This is Syke with Seraphim Airsoft, and we are answering some of your questions this morning. This is from Sam and Nia, a friend of mine whose channel just exploded overnight as they had a literal viral video. You can click right here to see Sam and Nia's viral video. It's pretty funny. You might like it. Check it out. Here's his question. When and where is your next Airsoft game? Sam, you're always invited, and I'll text you that information. We may be playing sooner rather than later. My buddy C-Man asks a couple good questions. If you're not already subscribed to C-Man's Airsoft channel, then you're missing out on some really good Airsoft action. Click this little box right here to go check C-Man out. Besides an M4, and I'm just going to assume that also includes any sort of M4 variant, what type of gun, Airsoft gun, would you run? And I'm going to say that's a great question. And my answer is going to be probably a G36. I might pick the longer variant than the G36C. I'm not quite sure what that variant's called, but I always kind of like the look of the G36 variants. Those guns are really cool. They're light. Their mags hold a lot of BBs, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to say a G36, probably a KWA G36, which I've always thought is a pretty excellent gun. C-Man also asks that great old question, what got you into playing Airsoft? That's a really fun question. And like most of you, it was my friends. Circus had started getting interested in it. He's always had an interest in real steel. And so he kind of found out about the sport of Airsoft. Neither one of us were paintball players, but we're both competitive guys. We like sports. And so it looked like a great way to spend some good time outside getting active, which our wives appreciate. And so that's it. It was really through Circus that I got involved. But once Circus kind of had interest, man, we just kind of propelled each other forward to keep getting new guns and keep getting new gear and keep going out there and playing. And for a while we even had an airsoft field that was totally free on Circus's property, which was pretty cool. And now we usually just play at professional fields. Devin Dillon asks, what's the worst airsoft gun you've owned? He said, I think we've all owned a couple stinkers. What is it about the gun that ticked you off? Also, follow-up question, what's the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to you during an airsoft game? Oh, that's a good question. The worst gun, clearly, that I've ever owned, Dylan, is some no-name, cheesy, to call it an AEG is even insulting. I think the gearbox is made of like broken Lego pieces or something. Like I don't even know the name of the brand. It's so cheap. It's so terrible. Once we actually started getting serious about Airsoft, I haven't owned any bad guns. I started with a really solid JG Commando, which was great. It was upgraded. It shot at 400. It shot accurately. I put a tight bore barrel, did a little bit of modification to it, and it was a great little gun. And then from there, I've owned everything from classic armies and KWAs, and now I even own a Polar Star. So other than those very first initial couple Springer type guns and that really cheap AEG gun I bought, I haven't really owned bad guns. I've never owned a bad gun that I actually fielded with any sort of regularity. And so that no-name AEG, so I'd say that was the most terrible gun. The most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me. You know, unlike a lot of players, I haven't, to my knowledge, had any terribly embarrassing moments. I'm a pretty cautious player, a pretty careful player, so I'm not out there, you know, falling down or losing my mags. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've ever lost any equipment, any mags, any pins, any guns, anything. And so I don't know that I have a really embarrassing moment. That is to say, though, that if I had one, I would tell you. I'd be happy to share it. I think it'd be funny. But Circus, on the other hand, does have one really embarrassing moment that was caught on video by my helmet cam. And since I don't really remember an embarrassing moment, I'll let Circus's embarrassing moment be mine. Click that box right there and watch for Circus's incredibly embarrassing and it looked pretty painful moment. I hope I pronounced this correctly. Mac Yorma XQ asks, would you get a WeTech M4 gas blowback rifle or a KWA or a GMP M4 gas blowback rifle? Now, I have never personally fielded a gas blowback rifle, so I've heard they can be a ton of fun and the realism makes them a blast. But just in general, I would take a GMP or a KWA over a WeTech. I know WeTech makes decent gas blowback rifles, but I would just stick with what I've had good luck with, and that's KWA, and I've always heard amazing things from G&P, so that's the direction I would go. Sorry, I can't speak from experience, except to say I have owned a bunch of KWA products, and they've all been stellar, engineered to outperform. Colby Pearson asks, what's your favorite brand or company that produces airsoft guns? I'd probably just stick with the dependable. And I know this is going to be a boring answer, but I would probably just say KWA. They make decent exteriors, they're pretty solid, and that 2GX gearbox it kind of does live up to the hype. And so I'd say KWA. I think my favorite, I owned a great KWA AEG, and I've owned several KWA pistols, and all of them have worked wonderfully. And so I would say KWA, if I had to choose just one, I would choose a KWA as my favorite airsoft gun manufacturer. Several people asked, when are you going to make another high five video? If you don't know about the high five, you can click right there and see some of our high fives. High five was a series of videos where I would show you the 5 best airsoft videos, in my opinion, from the previous week. Guys, I stopped doing the high five for 2 reasons. Number one is it just wasn't getting enough views. I know there was a group of people that really enjoyed it and would watch every video, and I really enjoyed making them, but they just didn't take off like I was hoping they would. And second, and this is probably the most important reason, it was just very time consuming. I couldn't turn on a camera, share my thoughts, or go over a gun. I had to watch literally like 50 to 100 airsoft videos from really good channels, but that time factor really came into play. I have a new little baby, I have a full-time job, I got a lot of stuff going on, and so it just kind of ate away at my free time, and so I just decided to put it aside. And if I ever take it up again, hopefully it'll get more views, and maybe I'll find a way to take up less time. So right now the high five is RIP, but maybe it'll come back someday if you guys want it enough. One of my best buddies in the airsoft world, CQB Russian, asks, why do milsim guys hate CQB guys? Or what he actually says is, why milsim guys don't like CQB guys? I don't know if I should say that in a terrible Russian accent. Why milsim guys don't like CQB guys? I'm sorry if that offended you, Russian. I apologize for my terrible Texas accent, trying to do a Russian accent, the most generic Russian accent of all time. But I think it's because the milsim guys take themselves very seriously, and they don't like the guys that are all about efficiency and function. They want things to look a certain way. They want to use certain terms. And like guys like the Mako team that really do try to really be milsim, but they're also having a ton of fun. Like, I don't think those guys are included in your question, but there are those milsim guys out there, and I'm just gonna say milsim guys because I don't curse. But they just kind of take it a little too seriously. It's not like it's a pastime. It's almost like it's a second job, and they think they have the right because they've spent tons of money on their kit and their gear and how they look, and maybe they have former military training or something, to bark out at other people and look down at other people. And I know that's not all the milsim community for sure, but there are some of you out there and they're giving you a bad name. And then on the other side, there's the little kids out there running around that are little CQB players. They give airsofters a bad name too. And so if we'll all merge towards the middle with respect for one another and honor and integrity, I think both sides would get along great. Because let me tell you, man, those CQB nuts, those guys can whoop it. They can get out there and take fools down. Their aggressive style, their speed style. Milsim guys I've found have a hard time adjusting to that. And then, a lot of times CQB guys don't do well at the larger ops because they're not used to that sort of regimented structure. And so I think if we both learn from each other, it'll be great. Max Monroe asks, what are your thoughts on Polar Stars? As in, do you think they are fair? Well, my thoughts on Polar Stars, Max, are this. I own one. It has been my primary gun that I've been running recently, and man, it is sick. It is absolutely awesome. I'm still in the process, honestly, of fine-tuning it and figuring out all its settings and all of its functions and just really getting it maximized and optimized to full potential. but the trigger response is unbeatable. The fact that it's so programmable is wonderful. Do I think they're fair? Absolutely, I think they're fair. Now, I think it can be unfair if you're cheating, which I mean by adjusting the FPS after you've chronoed, things like that. I've heard of people doing that. That's why the FPS locks are really good for Polar Stars. I think it's a good idea to keep people from the temptation of jacking up their FPS, but that's cheating. I don't think that has anything to do with it being necessarily unfair. So yes, I think they're a wonderful platform. The tank and the hose are a little bit irritating. I know that grinds some people's gears, but no, absolutely. The guns used rightly are entirely fair. They're just a superior product in a lot of ways, except aesthetically. That tank and that tube do take away from the look of the gun, and so if you're trying to be as realistic looking as possible, then a Polar Star is not for you. Also, if you don't just have a ton of cash to throw down, they're not for you either. And so yeah, I think they're fair when used properly, and I think they're absolutely wonderful pieces of technology. They're an absolutely incredible tool that can help you be an even more successful airsoft player. The Asian Boys 1 asks, would you get a KWA LM4 or a really good cookie? It depends. What's the effective range on that really good cookie? And I love cookies, but if I'm saying they're both before me and being offered to me, yeah, I'm taking the LM4. You can have the cookie. I'll take a lesser cookie and still get the LM4. How's that work? One of my favorite all-time viewers, 1997 Nighthawk, what's up dude, asks this question. What's your favorite song to listen to when you're trying to get pumped up for a game? Mine is Rage Against the Machine, Killing in the Name. Man, that's a good selection. Man, in general, I would say anything from Rage Against the Machine is going to be a pretty good pump-up selection, right? I don't have a song that I listen to. I don't listen to any music to get pumped up. As a matter of fact, I would say my strategy is the exact opposite. I try to get really calm and soothe away all the kind of the little pregame jitters that we all have before they blow that whistle. I try to get really calm. I try to get really focused. I try not to rush, but to still move quickly. And so I think Rage Against the Machine, for me, or music like that, might kind of get me thinking in the wrong direction. If it works for you, Nighthawk, that's awesome. For me, I want to find a place of serenity before that match starts. I hope I'm pronouncing this last name correctly. Linda Susan asks, how much do you think you've spent on airsoft items? So the whole shebang, the whole thing, how many dollars have I spent on airsoft? Now, there's no way for me to remember that. I haven't kept detailed receipts, but I'm sure, and I know it's in the thousands and thousands of dollars. I would guess it's probably somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000. I've also been playing for over 5 years at this point, so if you break that down, I think it's a little more manageable. But no, it definitely got away from me there early, and I had to sell off a lot of my guns, which I made a ton of my money back on, by the way. But no, yeah, it's an expensive hobby if you let it be one. If you're frugal and want to manage your resources well, it can be a pretty inexpensive pastime. But I think most of the guys that get really into it buy a few too many guns and a bit too much gear. And so great question, Linda. Thank you for publicly embarrassing me. Kay Wickley asks, what's your favorite camo? Man, that's a good question. I've put very little thought into that. I can tell you up front my favorite look, and I know this is really generic, it's going to irritate some of you guys. My favorite look is just the contractor look. Give me a black top and tan pants and tan boots. I really like that look. It's very comfortable. It's easy. It's an easy set to put together. I think I like some of those really nice camos out there. But if I have to choose an actual camo pattern, I know this is boring. It's going to infuriate some of you guys, but I'm just going to go woodland. I'm just going to say, give me a nice combat shirt. Give me some OD out there. Give me some woodland, and we'll make that work, man. Good question. All right, I love this guy's channel name. Scary Santa asks, where did the name Seraphim Airsoft come from? That is a great question. The name Seraphim Airsoft comes from the Bible, where there's a certain type of angel that is described as a seraphim, and seraphim in the Hebrew there means the burning ones, or the ones on fire, or to burn. And so it's a really cool idea that these creatures in heaven are like on fire. They're so close to God's throne that they're just like these burning, blazing creatures of awesomeness. The idea of Seraphim Airsoft just kind of came together pretty naturally, and Circus really liked the idea too, and so that was it. Seraphim Airsoft was born. JIIKX1 asks, what do you prefer at an airsoft field? A daycare full of little kids or milsim elitists. So inexperienced players who are unlikely to call their hits because they are little kids, or super experienced, opinionated airsoft players who are unlikely to call their hits because they've spent so much money to be there that they're better than everyone else. I think that's the nature of the question, and my answer is obviously neither. I don't want to play with jerks or brats. I have no problem playing with milsim players, and I have no problem playing with little kids as long as they play with honor and integrity. So if I have to choose between the two, I'm going to choose, honestly, the little kids, because I can guilt the little kids into playing honestly. And just truthfully, there have been times where there's nothing you can do when a 45-year-old man refuses to call his hits. So I'm going to say I'll play with the little kids because I can scare them into playing honest and not play with guys who think they're better than everyone else. So guys, thank you so much for the great questions. I hope you enjoyed my answers. If you want to see more great airsoft videos from us, click one of those two TVs right there. If you want to help us out and subscribe, click that blue box right there. It's 100% free for you, and it helps us to continue to support the great sport of airsoft. You guys stay awesome. Keep on airsofting.
It was awesomely good. Lay to the side. Woo! The first one went off of this.